A pesticide ban is coming to a town near you. Are you ready? Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business. Hey there, welcome to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. This is Frank Hernandez, your Pest Geek, and I have a podcast that I was looking at doing and starting a couple of weeks ago because I knew this was coming, and I knew that there was going to come a point in time where a major city somewhere is going to impose a pesticide ban, and I was following what's been happening in Ontario and in Maine and in other parts of the country, and I said I need to do a podcast on this to basically inform people of what's coming. And lo and behold, on October 6, 2015, Montgomery County City Council, in a 6-3 decision, voted to ban just every synthetic pesticide on the market with every active ingredient, and only allow products that are natural, organic, or FIFRA exempt to be used in every, and I say every, private property in the county, in Montgomery County, for the use of what they call cosmetic pesticides for lawn pests, weeds, and diseases. The only problem that I have, the major problem that I'm having with this, is that once again, politicians make rules for everyone else based upon only their own political view, because this is a political issue. This is not a health crisis issue that something has to be done. And in the law, we're going to be looking at that law, at that bill, because the only information I was able to get online were from sources like the Washington Post, which covered it pretty much from beginning to end. But everything is a soundbite today with the media. Nobody really sits down and discusses what's in that bill. The bill gets passed, and then everybody gets to find out about it afterwards, and nobody really reads the bill. And I'm going to focus the majority of this podcast on that bill and looking at what are they attempting to do. But conveniently, the biggest problem I have is that they gave in to the pressure of environmental protection organizations and ignored all of the science, but conveniently allowed those pesticides that they banned to be used on their sports fields and on golf courses because of the pressure that they got from basically the soccer moms. And the fact that they know from all the science that they have that what they're proposing is preposterous and impossible. They know they cannot maintain those sports fields with these organic products for every problem that's going to arise in a sports field and on those golf courses. So they exempted those, and they are allowed to use even the highly targeted neonicotinoids, which they are rallying so hard against. They allowed those to be used on those sports fields. There were, I believe, 9 council members. Only 3 voted against it. Sidney Katz, Craig Rice, and Roger Berliner voted against the ban. And Roger Berliner had a letter that he wrote And we're going to be reading that part of that letter and what his concern and the proposals he made for the changes in that law, in that bill. How they were completely ignored and they did it anyway and passed the bill as intended. It's just too convenient for me to see this, that, again, politicians will make rules for everyone else and exempt themselves from those rules. You see, you really don't believe what you are saying, because if you really believed and had a conviction about what you were doing, I would have respected them more on this issue, which I really find appalling, the way they went about it. I would have respected them more if they would have said, we're going to ban it on every county property, every city property. We're going to suffer ourselves first. Create a program to show the world that we can do this, and we're going to be the first county in the nation to do it. Pull it off. And we're going to take our own properties, and we're going to prove it can be done. I would have respected them for doing that, and I would have applauded it, because I am all for the reduction of synthetic pesticides. I'm all for it. My company is what that's all about. The whole issue where they took testimony from people who had suffered with cancer. One person said, my father worked in the oil business and he got cancer. What does that have to do, the oil business, with the pesticides? We all know that motor oil is a carcinogen. There is nobody that understands the issue of cancer more than I do. You see, from the time I was 10 years old to the time I was almost 18, I lived with childhood cancer. The only thing I knew from the age of 10 to the age of 17 was my house and a hospital bed. A person who lost his remission 3 times. This is why I am a proponent of reducing all kinds of chemicals. But to impose a sweeping ban on all of society, I think that is not what our Constitution and what we as Americans embrace. So I have done in my business, and I understand this issue, because for 6 years, all I've done is find ways to reduce the amount of synthetic pesticides to the point where I've reduced synthetic pesticide usage in my business to over 66% from the industry standard. When I gave a class to a group of CPOs and technicians years ago, about 6 years ago, and I showed them my methods, and I showed them my equipment, and I showed how I reduce the amount of water that I use, about 90%. When I showed that I reduce my cost of pesticides from the industry standard of 15% down to 5%, where my GHP pest control pesticides is less than 3% of my cost of goods. They were all in awe. The only ones that complained were the reps that were there, saying this guy can't be saying that because he's going to ruin the industry. You see, when you try to be a person that leads the way, you're going to get a lot of flack. But I'm willing to lead the way with innovation. I'm willing to lead the way with savviness. I'm willing to lead the way in a free market economy. The way I see it, there's only about 4% of customers that want my product. that's good enough for me. But a sweeping ban on pesticides is not the right way to go about it. And here's why. The only way that politicians can get anything done is through tyranny. And here's why. They're no longer any Martin Luther Kings to inspire us, to give us a dream. There are no more Kennedys in our politics to challenge us to reach for the stars. There are no more Ronald Reagans to invigorate the American spirit. Instead, we have tyrannical dictators in government shoving their views, their leftist views, stuff that we learn firsthand, that I have firsthand experience as a Cuban American, that when you allow this type of activity to happen in your country will end up the same as my country. Your country will end up the same as every South American country with tyrannical dictators, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when you have a council that is built up of one political party only, this is what you end up with. Has nothing to do with science. It has nothing to do with the will of the people. As a matter of fact, the will of the people was that they have beautiful lawns, according to what most people are saying, that everybody had a sign on their lawn that it had been sprayed down the street, and this is what most people are against. I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed that they did not care what everybody had to say. They had made up their minds when they were working on this bill to pass it as is and not care what anybody in that city or that county. The fact that these people fail to inspire anybody to greatness is the greatest disappointment that I have. You see, the second largest disappointment that I have is the fact that I have not heard a peep from the National Pest Management Association on this. I don't know if they sent a representative to testify before this committee. I have not found a single piece of document, them defending this or being against it or taking a position. Nor did the Maryland Pest Management Association have anything to say about this that I've been able to find on the web. All they have is a link to what's happening and the legislation, and that's it. Supposedly, this is the association that is supposed to be looking out for us, the pest management people. And yet, an organization like Beyond Pesticides has had more influence in this decision-making than we've been able to try to have influence in an arena or a platform that greatly affects us. I have not heard or seen anything. As hard as I've looked for something to exonerate them from this, and they have not commented or done anything on this. And I am greatly disappointed for that. But I spent most of my Sunday for about 5 hours reading through the 127 pages that are in the bill, which I have a link to on our website at pestgeekpodcast.com. You can go to pestgeekpodcast.com and you can get all the links from the Washington Post, which has been really the only newspaper that I've seen covering this extensively. And, of course, it's a newspaper, and there are a lot of sound bites and people said. But nothing really seriously covered on this. Montgomery County, Safe Grow Montgomery.org is the organization responsible for really pushing the bill. And yet there are no real opposition. I have a ton of videos that I have put on the website for you to check out the videos. And I put all this information in one place because it's scoured all over the web, and it's very, it doesn't make, top of mind awareness. I mean, there is no one out there really, really, really seriously looking at this as a big problem. But I think it's a huge problem. We're going to be looking at the law. We're going to be looking at, where did this come from? Well, this all started back in Ontario, Canada, where an entire area decided they were going to be pesticide free, and they banned just about, I think, every single synthetic pesticide on the market. But it then you got a city and a town in Maine of 1,300 people. Algonquin. I'm having trouble pronouncing that. I'm sorry if I butchered your name of the town. It's a little town, about 1,300 people in Maine, who voted by 60% vote to eliminate all pesticides. Now, whether it was done, I really don't have specifics on the city council and the people, but if it was a vote by the people to do this, to vote for this in a little town, I have no problem with that. I really don't, because you as a citizen, and if you vote and you have the right to vote and you voted on an issue as sensitive as this, and you decided in your little city, in your town, that most of the residents agree in a vote that this is not for you, then that's part of the democratic process in this country. And you have a right to say, we don't want to live in a city where they live really next to the water. It's a waterfront community. And they did this. Now, what guided them to do it was a very old book by Carson in 1962 called The Silent Spring, about how chemicals were going to take over the planet. In the pesticide world since 1962, many of those products aren't even on the market anymore. I have no problem with a city passing an ordinance saying we're going to ban all pesticides that have been proven by the EPA to be carcinogens. I would have no problem with that. They are proven carcinogens. They are proven to cause cancer. And if you decide to get rid of them, I would applaud you. I really would. Because I don't carry any products that are labeled carcinogens. I got rid of all my organophosphates. I got rid of all of my carbamates when I started my business immediately. The fact that I had to use them before when I worked for somebody else is different. But when I had the chance to choose in my business, I decided I didn't want to sell that. But that's my free market economy right to do that. In Tacoma Park, Maryland, the town also did the same thing and banned the same, basically only FIFRA exempt and organic pesticides are allowed to be used there. It just so happens that George Leventhal, which is one of the council members in the county, was the one also responsible in Tacoma Park to ban all these pesticides. So he managed to do it in his city, and then he wanted to take his vision countywide. He's a man on a mission. You see? And the problem you have in that county is pretty much everyone in that county is of one party only in the council. And that's a huge problem. So what has happened? Well, let's take a look at the bill. Let's take a look at what they're saying. This bill, and what it includes. What was the purpose on this bill? This happened on, like I said, October 6th. They finally voted. And I think they were working on this for about 2 years. So this is not something that just popped up on the radar and that we had no clue that was coming and that nobody had time to prepare for and that nothing, this just caught us by surprise. No, it didn't. This was coming for a long time. And what they intend to do in the bill, mainly, here's what the 5 main objectives of this bill. To require posting and notices of certain lawn applications of pesticides. Prohibit the use of certain pesticides on lawn. Prohibit the use of certain pesticides on county-owned property. Require the county to adopt an integrated pest management program for certain county-owned property and generally amend county laws regarding pesticides. The first part is that they have in Maryland a major university that teaches IPM. And the fact that they're now saying they want to adopt an integrated pest management program for their county would make me scratch my head and say, wait a minute, how is it that you guys are proponent of us and you've never taken integrated pest management seriously? Really? Well, the fact is that the parks people have declared that they have used IPM and they've already lowered the use of pesticides by 84% on their parks. So it says certain. They want certain lawn pesticides. Certain. Certain means according to this law, when you read it, according to this bill, it's every synthetic pesticide. The council president, Mr. Leventhal, is the one that is pushing this through. Well, they want to require the posting of a lawn treated more than 100 square feet, consistent with notice requirements with landscaping business treats lawn with pesticides. Now, here is where they get specific. Number 2, they require the executive to designate a list of non-essential pesticides, including they're going to hire a person who's going to be the executive for this bill, and he's going to decide what pesticides get banned and are considered non-essential. Okay? Well, here's the list. All pesticides classified as carcinogen to humans or likely to be carcinogen to humans by the EPA. So every pesticide that is likely to be or has already been determined. You know what? I have no problem with that. Go ahead and bet. There's not that many. If you look at the list of products that are considered to be carcinogenic, it's not that big. It's actually, I've never even heard of those active ingredients that I've ever used them. I have no problem with that. Then all pesticides classified by the BA as restricted use products. I have no problem with that for residential homes. I don't use any restricted use products. I don't have an RUP license. I don't need it to control those pests on those lawns. Neither do you. All pesticides classified as Class 9 pesticide by the Ontario Canada Ministry of the Environment. In other words, they're using the law in Canada to be their basis for this law. So all Class 9 pesticides. I got a list. I got a link to that legislation, by the way, that you can look up all of the pesticides that are banned under the Class 9 in Canada. Second, all pesticides classified as endocrine disruptors by the European Commission. So they're using the European information to base this law. And then here it says, any other pesticide which the executive determines are not critical to pest management in the county. So it's at his discretion that he's going to ban what he will consider to be non-essential. And that's going to be pretty much by the time you finish reading this law and you read what these other cities have done and what Leventhal has done in his own city, you're limited to really FIFRA exempt and organic products and biologicals. That's it. Here's the problem. Every pest control company now in that county is going to be pretty much an organic and natural product in the county for lawn care. And people don't realize what that cost is going to be now. I mean, if you went from, let's say, a 2-month program at about, $65 to $85, you get ready to pay 2 to 3 times more for that service, because you know how many applications are going to have to be performed of those products? How much real integrated pest management is going to have to happen that nobody's going to be able to afford it. And I think that's the purpose. So generally prohibited the application of non-essential pesticide to lawn, exceptions of noxious weeds, invasive species, control, agricultural and garden, and golf courses. Required the executive to conduct a public outreach and education campaign before, during, and implementation of the bill. Generally prohibit the application of non-essential and neonicotinoid pesticides to county-owned property, and require the county to adopt an integrated pest management program. I would have thought, really, that they would have already had an IPM program in place. But the fact is that this is not integrated pest management. This is a ban on all synthetic pesticides, which under their own university, you see, is as acceptable. Listen, I don't know anybody who is in the business of saying, yeah, let's destroy our water. Yeah, let's destroy our soil. Yeah, let's destroy and cause cancer to everyone. Nobody is really in favor for that. That is an insult to say that if we want a pesticide applied to our lawn, that we're all in favor, and demonize everyone in the world for wanting to do that. So that's what's in the law, but here's where it gets really good. They had a whole bunch of work sessions where everybody testified according to that. And here is what the guy who voted against this ban, there were businesses and local businesses that said, look, this is going to increase our cost dramatically. And it is going to put a bunch of people out of business. It is. A lot of landscapers and a lot of people who are in this business are going to be put out. I mean, that's just a reality of what's going to happen. I don't think that by itself should be the motivation why we pass a law or we don't, based on if people are going to lose their jobs. I mean, when the automobile took off, the guy who made buggy whips had to adapt to the fact that he should have made, instead of making buggy whips, he should have just started making seat belts or belts for the engines. The fact that in business you can't adapt, you can't change, is not a basis for whether we pass a law or not. I don't think that's the basis of it. But I think he made the same argument that I'm making, okay, to this. And I'm going to read a portion of it because the parks also weighed in on it and they weren't for it. And the reason they weren't for it is they're saying we don't have the budget to do this. And the amount of increase in budget we're going to need to do this is not available to us. Okay? Now, the bill itself is about 27 pages long. It's not a long bill. I think 21 pages long in total. I think they went from 21 to 27. I think, the bottom part of it has 21 pages on this bill. Okay. So did they do a physical impact study? No, not requested. An economic impact study, they didn't request one. Did they have any evaluations on this? No. Did they have any experts try to do this before they passed this law to see if it's actually even doable? No. They didn't. They will impose a Class C violation, though, if you do this. So if they catch you, pretty much they're going to have one inspector for the entire county to basically supervise all of these properties. And basically what they're relying on is you being ratted out by your neighbor to get this done. So that's the extent of what they're wanting in this law. Now, I'm going to get to page, this is about 125 pages, and I'm going, they did an economic impact study just for their parks. Okay. As far as what it's going to cost. Well, so far, here's where this gets totally ludicrous for me. Okay. They're supposed to already be having all this IPM in place for their parks, according to state laws, according to what most universities are recommending. These people are either ignorant, stupid, or both. But I can't put my arms around this. They're going to have to spend in their parks an estimated $12 million in their parks. Okay? In order to be able to pull this off, or try to pull this off, just in their sports fields. Because when they did the study, they got to even buy an aerator, which costs $100,000. Now, it's shocking to me that you have best management practices already in place from every major university that they didn't even bother to look at for the last 10 years and not own an aerator for these sports fields. Which tells me they were never serious about this from the beginning. That's what's shocking to me. That they're going to be able to, and what they concluded at the end of their economic impact study, which I have here in this document that I have before me, that I'm looking to this. And they have concluded that if they can't control in their sports fields, they're going to go over to synthetic sports fields. Here's the problem. If you're really looking, and science doesn't really matter to you, and it doesn't look like it does matter to these people, have you seen all the controversy with synthetic sports fields that they cause cancer in children? And that the kids that have been playing on these sports fields are all getting cancer. But obviously, you don't care really about the cancer and carcinogens. You care about passing a ban on pesticides. Because if you don't care about the science involved in pesticides, you should then not even consider a synthetic sports field as an option, because as you yourself have said, we can't depend on the EPA's inconclusive information to make a decision. Well, the EPA is inconclusive also on synthetic sports field. And the fact that you even included it in the bill just points to the asinine mindset that you have. I mean, I'm looking at this, and I'm in shock. Roger Berliner, which was one of the people that voted against it, made the suggestion that they should only limit this ban to communities, to their own county property first, which is what I've been saying. And only city property, and then take a couple of parks, convert them over to organic only, to biologicals only, and do a test to see if this actually works. And basically, the opponents of this came out, which was actually the people at Beyond Pesticides, came out and said they disagree with Mr. Berliner because it primarily changes everything in the bill. And what they were interested in that bill passing was as is. Okay? As is. And not make any changes to it. And basically ban every single synthetic pesticide. That was their goal. That was the goal here. Even their own athletic director, in response to this, said, yes, I agree with Mr. Berliner. Their own county people, their own city people are saying it can't be done. And they ignored their own county people in this. It's not like the people were outraged and everybody in the government was on board with this. Let's just pass it and get it done. You see, the 282 playgrounds needed to be weed free. I would like to know how they're going to do that. How they're going to have people pulling weeds by hand in that city. What chemical are they going to use to control weeds from encroaching? And the other people just basically just ignored this. It's all here in this document, folks. It's on my website at pestgeekpodcast.com. You can get all the links to all this, which nobody has actually linked to. None of the Washington Post did not link to this legislation. It's almost like we're really not interested in looking at the law. Okay? We're only interested in the emotional aspect of all this. We're not interested in looking at the facts. We're not interested in saying what's in this law, what it actually means. When you read it, pretty much it's a ban on every single synthetic pesticide. And they've worked with nobody in the science. Not even their own universities are quoted here, which is insulting to them. I would, if I was a major university with entomologists, pathologists, people who are agronomers, people who deal with the environmental impact of all this, weren't even considered. They weren't brought in. And that to me would be seriously insulting, that you ignored everybody on this. And what you're saying is you're going to end up with integrated pest management. No, you don't have integrated pest management. And this is the problem with the uneducated people that don't understand what integrated pest management is. And I agree that you should use a pesticide last. Any pesticide. Look for a way that you can reduce. Because here's the reality. The people that are most affected by this are not the homeowners. The technicians that have to carry these pesticides, handle these pesticides, apply the pesticides, are the ones that are affected most and first. And nobody even mentioned that. You see? Nobody is concerned about the health and well-being of the technician. It's all about our agenda. It's become, this has become a cult and a religion. It's no longer a science, no longer about public debate, because you cannot debate with these people. It's either you give us everything or there is nothing to negotiate. It is the equivalent of trying to deal with terrorists. Because they're not interested in listening to anything other than what they've already set their mind to do and accomplish. And that to me is very dangerous when we go down that path. Because it goes beyond a nanny state. One of the things I do love, actually, about looking at all these reports is the fact that if you're interested, really interested, in understanding organics and understanding biologicals, the National Organic Standards Board submitted their document of what they consider to be real organic. What is organic involved? And you got to go down a couple of pages on it, but it's there. It's very extensive, very nice. If you're wanting to get into organics, if you're wanting to get into really understanding what products are allowed to be used and what products are not, and how often they're used, to get control and get this done. So that I think that is something of a positive that the industry can look at, and those of you who are not gotten into this could get into the use of pheromones, the use of different products to get this, and what's working, what's not, and what they've considered to be organic. One of the costs that this is going to add to the technician, pest control operator, or company wanting to do business in Montgomery County is going to be astronomical. And here's why. In Article 2 of the notice requirements that you have to give to a customer that wants to do business with you, and the customer is being defined as a person that wants to contract a custom applicator to have a custom application done of pesticide to the lawn. And here's what the applicator must do, or the company must do, before they can engage in business with you. A custom applicator must give to a new customer, before an application, a list of all the trade names of each pesticide that might be used. A generic name of each pesticide that might be used. Specific customer safety precautions, including all potential health risks identified by the United States Environmental Protection Agency and the World Health Organization for each pesticide that might be used. After the application, a list of the trade names pesticide actually used must be given, and the generic name actually used must be given. A written notice about pesticides prepared by the department. In other words, what the department, I assume it is their Department of Agriculture or their county department. Written notice about pesticides prepared by the department. Department must prepare to keep current and provide to customer applicator a written notice about pesticide for a custom applicator to give to the customer under the subsection B. The notice prepared by the department under subsection B, C, it's like, huh? That's exactly what I'm reading. They must give basically a government agency phone number to call to make consumer complaints about anything that could possibly happen to you if you get sick by one of these pesticides. Receive technical information on pesticides and get assistance in the case of medical emergency. So, we basically have to provide now assistance for you if you decide you get sick from this product. A list of general safety precautions a customer should take when a lawn is treated with a pesticide. A statement that custom applicator must be licensed by the Maryland Department of Agriculture. Follow safety precautions. A statement that the customer has the right to require the custom applicator to notify the customer before each treatment of the lawn of a customer with a pesticide. Before applying the pesticide to the lawn, the customer applicator must inform the new customer the existence of other means of pest control without the use of restricted lawn care pesticides. In other words, what they are, this is their definition. Restricted lawn care pesticides is what the law is restricting. Okay? The practice of integrated pest management, including the description of the process of IPM that is consistent with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Okay? Obtained from a new customer or written in another electronic format approved by the director. In other words, anything they put out, you must inform the customer about. Acknowledgement that the customer received the information required under this subsection. And direction from the customer as whether or not to use IPM practices. A custom applicator must retain an acknowledgement from a new customer obtained under this subsection for at least 1 year. Immediately after immediately after the application, a custom applicator must post a sign on the lawn, place markers within along the perimeter of the area where pesticides will have been applied. A sign marked required under the section be clearly visible from the principal place of access to a person immediately outside the perimeter of the property. Be the size and form and color approved by the department. Be made of materials approved by the department and have wording with the content and dimensions approved by the department. Be placed on the day of the pesticide is applied. A person who performs a private lawn application treating an area more than 100 square feet or any area of any size within 5 feet of a property line must place markers along the perimeter where pesticides will have been applied. I mean, it's what you're going to end up with is you're going to have to, every time you do your sales presentation to a customer, you will probably end up spending an hour or two with that customer to explain to them everything. You're going to have to explain how they have to mow their lawn. You're going to have to explain to them how there are alternatives that might or might not work. And the customer then says, I want that product or service, I want the alternative, and then is complaining when it has no effect or no. But you're responsible for that. Pretty much what you're going to have to do right now is you're going to have to get yourself a 3-ring binder. Okay? For all the information they want you to provide to the customer, which is about 2 inches. Because remember, it says everything about the pesticides that you're going to use or you intend to use, that not only is by the EPA, every information you have about that product from the EPA, but also from the World Health Organization. So you will show up with a 2-inch ring binder to this customer and says, here, I need you to acknowledge the receipt of this. This is all the information on everything that could possibly ever happen to you if I apply a pesticide. And I have to keep a record that I gave this to you. All that is missing, really, the only thing they didn't require is that you attach a copy of the Communist Manifesto to this. That's it. That's the only thing that's missing. And that would have made it really complete. See, the burden that you're going to put on the business, an annual service that could cost you $1,000 is now going to cost you $3,000. Basically, it's discouraging anybody from from doing business in the county. You see, because this is a huge amount of burden to put on this business. And for the customer to say, okay, here's what I acknowledge, and then raise a billion questions to you about that you have to answer. You see, about everything that is in every one of those products that you intend to use. This is just a ludicrous bill. I mean, there's no other. I have no way of looking at this bill and saying, is there anything in this bill that's really, really good for this county? I can't find any. Other than the fact that this should spark a national debate. That the people of Montgomery County, in Maryland, basically now have, a decision to make, whether to not reelect these people next time they come up for election, have this law repealed, or basically sue the county government over this. They have no options. You can't do anything. And that is the intent of the bill, is to tie everyone's hands from doing anything at all other than what they have decided they want to do. I think it is a travesty. I am so disappointed in several things that this has actually happened, and we the people are permitting this to happen. We, the people, are not as informed as we should be. We are sometimes sticking our head in the sand like an ostrich, pretending this is not a problem. That, the stuff that's happened in Europe, the stuff that's happening in South America, the stuff that happens in Cuba is never going to reach our soil. And I'm here to tell you that I came out of a communist regime. My family is still living in a communist regime. My brother has never, I've only seen my brother once in 45 years because he's not allowed to travel. The government owns everything and everyone. And if you allow this to continue to happen, well, shame on you, because you're the one that's permitting it. The people are not standing up in this country and are not getting informed. They're not getting involved. It's more interesting to find out what an actor or an actress is doing on Facebook 24/7 than to seriously get involved and find out what's happening in your community. And you deciding as a citizen, really, what's best for you. And I am just, like I said, I'm beyond myself. At first, when I first read it, and I was reading the articles, and I was reading through the articles, I was livid. I said, if I go on the air, I will probably need to have my prescription of lisinopril tripled, because I'm going to have a freaking coronary. I was that indignant with what happened. And I decided, let me look at the law. Let me see what they're actually, because sometimes what the media reports and what's actually being done is two different things. And it's actually a lot worse than I thought. So I encourage you to pass this along. Make everyone aware of it. Contact your state Pest Management Association. Ask them why they're really not getting involved, because supposedly they're supposed to be involved in legislation for us. They're supposed to be the voice for us. And I think from what I see so far, they took a back seat to this. I would consult, they made it clear that even their own attorneys for the county said, don't do it, because this is going to open you up to much expensive litigation. Don't go forward with this. And they ignored that too. It's all here, guys. It's all in the document. It's about 127 pages long. You can read everything about it, get informed, know what's happening, and do it. And, I just thank you for listening. I'm trying to be as composed as I can, as nice as I can about this, without name calling and getting involved in the politics, but you can't ignore it. You can't ignore this. I thank you guys for listening and for spending this time with me this week on the Pest Geek Podcast. I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.